Knees and toes.
The shoulders have to do with anything?
Because of what you did to my bold prediction. Yes, I'm taking this too far, but I don't care.
We're going. The noise is great for those who are audio only.
What's up, everyone, and welcome into a special edition of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Today, we have Analyst for the TSN and the Halifax Thunderbirds, along with co-host for the OTCB Podcast. Pat Gregoire is back on the show. Pat, thanks for jumping on with us, and how was the summer? I know you were overseas for a bit.
Yeah, summer was good. First and foremost, though, thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you again. Always a pleasure coming on this program and chopping all things up, not just Buffalo, but the entire NLL. Summer was good. Summer was great. Like you said, I was over in Europe for about 3 weeks almost. It was nice to get away just with the wife, get away from lacrosse for a little bit. But as you know, for us folks up here in Canada, there really isn't an off season. I coach a junior B team up here, the West Durham Ironheads. So once our season was done, we headed overseas. And then when I came back, it was boom, right back into the thick of things, the Minto Cup and then the President's Cup. So not much of an off season at all, but that, little 3 week stretch was enough to recharge the batteries.
So I see the Blue Jays jersey behind you. First off, condolences for the Blue Jays. I mean, my wife is a big Jays fan. That might also just be because of Bo Bichette. I'm kind of in a split marriage here. If he ever meets my wife, I might be in trouble. But holy crap, what a run. I mean, I hadn't watched baseball in probably 3 years, but I was glued to the TV. I was one of those psychos that stayed up through the 18-inning game, even though I had to work in 3 hours after that. It was, I don't know why, because I'm not a diehard Jays fan, but it was such an entertaining series from Seattle all the way to the finals.
Yeah, I think just when you look at this Blue Jays team, and I am a diehard Toronto fan through and through, Maple Leafs, Blue Jays, Raptors, you name it. Like, I support my Toronto teams, but I'm also aware that if you're outside of Toronto, these teams are very, very hateable to hate against. But for whatever reason, there were so many likable characters on this Blue Jays team. And then you pair it with the fact that, you mentioned the Seattle series, they come back, force that game 7, the theatrics of the Springer home run. And then you go up against, a David and Goliath scenario where pretty much everyone was like, well, the Blue Jays have no chance. This is done in 4. This is done in 5. And then game 1 happens. You're like, oh my God, this team might do it. So it captured the hearts of Canada. There's no doubt about that. But I think there was a lot of folks south of the border like yourself that found themselves cheering against the Dodgers, which also is not too hard to do either.
So the NLL season kicks off next week, and I wanted to have you on because there's not very many people, if any, that can break down the upcoming season like you can. So I figured I'd toss this one question out, and then we'll toss out a question for all of the 14 organizations, and then we'll just blitz through them all. But first off, when that trophy is raised at the end of May and a champion is crowned, what is one word that will sum up how the season will be remembered?
Parity. I think parity is the way that we can really sum this year up, at least from looking at the standings or the projected standings or just rosters on paper. I think it's going to be really difficult to tell the difference between the first seed and the 12th seed. And I think the gap between 5 and 12 will be even smaller, like the smallest we have ever seen. I think one win can go from you finishing almost with home floor to completely missing the playoffs. I think there's 2 teams at the bottom that, probably you could say safely that may not make the playoffs or likely won't make the playoffs. But after that, I think there's 12 teams that if you told me today they made the playoffs or they won a first round playoff matchup, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I do feel like everyone's saying, oh, well, it's Vancouver's year. They've already won. Buffalo, they're going to go back to back to back to back, or even a team like Vegas. Like, I don't think, though, with all that being said, the teams at the top aren't going to be as much better than everyone else that a lot of people think. But with it being said, too, I think those 2 bottom teams that I'm hinting, and I might as well just say, Philadelphia and Calgary, I don't think those are teams that are going to be competing for a playoff spot, but I think they're going to be way better than a lot of people are already writing them off. So the parity is going to be off the charts. I think it's going to be so tough for us to even choose who the top 8 teams are going to be. And I think not even just choosing the top 8, I think the seeding is going to be an absolute mess. It's going to be a lot of fun all the way down to the last game of the season.
Yeah, this is going to be our 5th year of doing this podcast covering the Bandits. It was the most difficult job we've had picking the predictions that we put out today. I knew the top 3 and I knew the bottom 2, but anywhere between 4 and 12, it was just a grab bag. Anybody that you put out of the bag would make sense to put them wherever you did. But we'll start with one of those teams that you just mentioned, Calgary. Likely the team that has seen the most change, not just from this last offseason, but you can date it back a few years. Most people, like you and I probably both, have them finishing towards the bottom of the standings. But as will be the case for all these teams, there's going to be storylines to follow with this season as the season progresses. Which situation to you is more likely to occur? Tanner Cook, and I know you're a big Tanner Cook guy, establishes himself as someone who can lead an offense in the NLL, or Aiden Walsh establishes himself as the new young goaltender that is set to replace Christian Del Bianco?
This is tough. The first one you throw at me might be the toughest question I'm going to face, but I think both are, I don't want to say very likely, but I think if this team wants to be competitive, and I'm not even saying make the playoffs, but have a playoff push, both things have to happen. Straight up needs to happen. I think the most likely of the two is because one person can really control the most of it, and that is Aiden Walsh. Last year, I know with the defense that was in front of him, like, let's be honest here, his numbers still were outstanding. He had a sub 10 goals against average, was like a 78.8 save percentage going into the season. Like, I don't think that Vancouver's season last year is all that different. Even with Christian Del Bianco comes in. Yeah, maybe they don't make the Final Four. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think they're battling for home floor advantage. That's how good that defense is in front. Mind you, now you add Christian Del Bianco in the net, it completely changes things. They go from a great team to an elite team. I think this Calgary team is going to there's going to be a lot of pressure on Aiden Walsh. But let's be honest, PK, like, he had pressure on him last year, even before that trade happened. The guy that was gunning for his job and the team eventually wanted was up in the stands with his buddies watching the game on the Jumbotron. He knew that Christian Del Bianco was breathing down his back. So having to fill in those shoes for Christian Del Bianco really isn't going to be that big of a task. I think it's the chip on his shoulder certainly is going to allow him to even perform even more. Now, mind you, how does he perform with a completely different defense in front? The defense is going to be vastly different from what we saw in Vancouver to what we'll see in Calgary. So I think that is the most likely situation, although I'm super high on Tanner Cook. I mean, this is a dude that played for Team Canada. Mind you, he made Team Canada because he is one of the best complementary pieces in the game, but he's going to need to be the solo stud. He finished with 70 points last year. I think he has to have at least 90 this year. I think we see that much of an uptick. The ball's going to be in his hand more often. So the only issue is, the other guys around him are going to have to finish the ball. So that's why I think Walsh is the more likely scenario of the two.
Yeah, I when we did our mid-season prediction or mid-season review and who's leading up for the awards, I had Aiden Walsh. I know I had him in the goaltender of the year category. I think I also had him in the MVP category. That's how well I think he was playing. So replacing Christian Del Bianco it's going to be nothing compared to, or to him, I should say. But Colorado, last year, one of my bold predictions was I had them finishing first in the league in scoring, and it looked real good off the start. And now Zed Williams, Connor Kelly, Connor Robinson are all traded. You got Eli McLaughlin still off the team right now with his work obligations, and Tyson Gibson was released. The only holdovers right now are Malcolm and Lee. Now, with all the new faces on offense, how good can we expect this group to look, say, by maybe February? Because I know there's going to be some kinks to work out in this offense.
Well, there's certainly going to be some growing pains, and I, coming into this season, kind of saw this team as a team that's going to have to win a lot of low-scoring, grinded-out games, as normally we see with the Mammoth, but they've also had capabilities of going off guys like Ryan Lee, going off, like you said, Zed Williams, not there anymore. Eli McLaughlin, when does he come back? But watching this group, and I know we can't get carried away with preseason. That's where a lot of expectations completely change. It's just a preseason game. They looked a lot better than I thought they would against the Toronto Rock on Saturday at the track. I really, really like the way they looked. I think Dylan McIntosh fits in with that group really well. I think the left side, adding Andrew Q, that trade could potentially be an absolute fleecing. To be quite honest, for Colorado, if the return is not what we think it is, and Connor Kelly doesn't play for Georgia, that could be an absolute nightmare of a trade, because Q looked like he fit in right away. 5 goals. He's an electric shooter from the outside. He's kind of like what you lost with Connor Robinson, but a little more athletic and has a little better vision. He's not just a spot-up shooter. So you get Will Malcolm, who's on the precipice, in my opinion, of being a superstar in this league, if he's not already. So I think they have the capabilities to be a very, very good offense. I think we just need to give this group a little bit more time. Braden Saris is kind of thrown right into the fire here. I'd like to see a little more out of him. I thought he was fine in that game on Saturday, but he's going to have to be heavily relied on as well. The left side, who fills in those void? Is it a Thomas Vella? Is Jamison Bucktooth going to be a rookie that's going to get that opportunity there? So I think Colorado fans can be patient, because this team on paper has potential. It just might take a little while. They're just lucky that their defense is young, athletic. They've got Dylan Ward that might be able to hold out the fire. But, honestly, I think there's a lot of question marks on the back end as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's part of the reason why I have them where I did in my standing prediction, because there's so much unknown with that team. But team that Colorado made a deal with is Georgia, next up on the list. And I've been calling for these moves for 2 years now. If anybody's ever listened to this podcast, I've just been hammering home. You're just repeating it over and over and over, but we're finally seeing some fresh names on the back of those Swarm jerseys for the first time in many, many years. But a lot of change all at once on both ends of the floor. And by my count, 14 first or second round picks in training camp between the last 3 drafts alone. Now, do you think, they should have worked on one end of the floor first and then the other end? Or do you think there are some benefits with kind of just, ripping the Band-Aid off and seeing what you got on both ends of the floor with all these changes?
This is a great question, because honestly, I've never thought of it that way. Whereas you choose one group, okay, let's go with a younger group, but let's maybe have our elder statesmen to hold it down in the back, or vice versa. Hey, let's get a little younger, a little faster, and we'll have all older guys, chip in together. They kind of went, just let's get rid of some older guys. Let's give an opportunity. We know John Arlotta loves his first round draft picks, and we're seeing a ton of them come into the fold this year. And even some other guys that aren't considered rookies, but a full season of Jacob Hickey is going to be a lot of fun. I think people are going to really see how good of a player that guy is. So for me, I think there is a benefit, especially considering when the next 2 years of drafts are unbelievably deep, like generational talent from top to bottom in that first round in both drafts. The other factor is that I think there is so much parity this year that, if you can compete, and some of these unknowns are not a bad thing. Look at what Albany, now Oshawa, was able to do a couple of years ago. When there isn't a lot of film this league, and I don't want to say overcoached, because it's still a great product on the floor, but there are so many good coaches and scouts in this league that are able to break down defenses and break down offenses. A little bit of the unknown is not really a bad thing. And one thing that you can't really out-coach is athleticism. And I think this group, especially out the back door, is supremely athletic. For me, though, I do feel like when it comes to the offense, there's just maybe a little bit too much pressure on Lyle Thompson and Shane Jackson to be the guys. They've been the guys forever. And then you look at just the young guys, it might be a little bit too much. And on the defensive side, sure, you still have McIntosh. You still have some of the other guys, like Adam Wiedemann, I think is supremely underrated. You still have him in the fold as well. Yeah, Mike Manley was a big signing as well. I wasn't sure if he was coming back or maybe going to head up to your guys' neck of the woods. I thought that could have been a potential landing spot, but he stays. So I really think this is an interesting team that I totally was with you. two things with this team. One, I felt like they needed to shake things up offensively probably 2-3 years ago. They do it this year. Might be a little bit too late. Who knows? But the other thing is I can't get a proper read on this team. Whenever I think they should win a game, they lose the game. Whenever they should, I think, oh, they're going to lose this game, they win the game. I just can't get a proper read on that. And that kind of is a telltale sign of an inconsistent group. Well, you get younger, so I only imagine this team might be even more inconsistent as well. But I do think the athleticism is going to be very, very tough to deal with. And regardless of the change that was done on the offensive side and the defensive side, this group will go as far as Brett Dobson will take them. I think that is as plain and simple as enough. He's been in this league enough now where I think he's no longer a young, promising goalie. He has to now go up and prove that he is a true, not only just a true number one, but a goaltender that we've been talking about a long time that you can build your franchise around.
Yeah, good first taste for a bunch of these guys going into Bandit Land on banner raising night.
Yeah.
Welcome to the NLL for some of those guys. But we'll move on to your neck of the woods, Halifax. And I think the biggest storyline with this team has been what it has been the last couple of years, and it's the goalie position. Is it good enough to make that long run into the playoffs? And they brought back the same tandem of Hutchison and Hill. Now, both had very good moments last year, but also had not so great moments last year. By year's end, if this team is going to be in the playoffs and make a run, who do you think is that guy between the pipes?
I think it's Warren Hill. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean it's going to be Warren Hill because we saw in the playoffs before, and in just some games, some key games, they went to Drew Hutchison. If you listen to Lax Class this week with Jake Elliott and Lucas Arger, they had Micah Kersey on, and he basically said, Warren's our guy, but there's going to be some games where we're going to go to Hutchison. We know Warren doesn't play well historically against some other teams, and maybe they're also realizing that, you know, a little bit of rest for Warren isn't the worst thing. And also, maybe you find out Hutch is your guy and he wins the job. I have been a proponent of this forever, though. You can make the playoffs with just okay to good goaltending. You can't make a run in the playoffs without great goaltending. And you can't win a championship without elite goaltending. I don't know. I don't think Halifax has elite goaltending for a long stretch. Warren Hill and Drew Hutchison can be elite for games. They have been able to prove that they've been elite for a long time. I thought Warren Hill was great in the summer this year, but when push came to shove in the Mann Cup, it was Doug Jameson's net. And that's not a knock on Warren Hill. That's also because Doug Jameson's one of the best goalies on the planet. But just with that being said, I think Warren Hill has to go out and prove it that it is his net, because I'll be honest, I don't think a team can win a championship with a tandem style goalie. So one of these guys got to go out and do it. If I had to choose, I think it would be Warren Hill, but it would not be surprising if Drew Hutchison ends up winning this job, as we saw him have a really, really strong summer with Peterborough this year.
So the next one is everybody's hotness right now. It's Las Vegas, and I think they're everyone's pick for the most improved offseason. And I know some people say Vancouver, and I kind of preference this and phrased it how I did last episode. Vancouver went from like a B+ to an A, and Vegas went from like a D to a B. So that's why I think they're the most improved. Their offense, with or without Jack Hanna, and you can argue, and I don't think it's really an argument, with Jack Hanna, they're extremely talented. But without him, they're still going to be a vastly entertaining offense. And being in Vegas, that definitely helps. But the questions there are still on the back end, but especially in net. And we just saw Justin Getty get released. I mean, there's 3 of them on the team right now, and this team has yet to finish above 5 wins. They're going into year 4. Is this the type of season that it's playoffs or bust for Sean Williams as both the head coach and the GM? Could we see him possibly next year, if they do fail to meet expectations, he either steps away from one or the other, or possibly even both?
I mean, I certainly think it has to. And the way that he had his offseason, it certainly looks like it. This is a guy, and no pun intended, with Vegas, is putting all his chips in, and going for broke here. I love what he did with the offense. We talked about it on OTCB. Yes, you bring in Fraser and Kluche, who, quote unquote, are going to be coming out of the shadows of Dane and Josh. But there's still not going to be a number one righty or lefty, because you still have maybe Hannah or Donville, kind of a 1A, 1B situation on the right side. And then with the lefties, I mean, Mitch Jones has been a perennial 100-point goal scorer or a point scorer for how long, right? So they're still, yes, they're going to get a little more touches. The ball's going to touch their stick more, probably going to be a little more involved in the man advantage. But with that being said, they still provide what they've been so good at, and being secondary scorers. And a guy like Kluch freeing up space, like him and Mitch Jones in a two-man game, is absolutely scary. But with that being said, they go out and they address some things on the defensive side of the floor. I think the Sellers pickup was huge. I think Malcolm was a really good pickup. They did go out and draft who, in my personal opinion, was I think could be the number one prospect on the board in Wilson. But Casey Wilson, who knows when he's coming back, if he's going to come back at all. But Las Vegas is near the upper half. And they're able to add a guy back like that. I think we're forgetting that they did draft him as well. So that could be a completely different X factor. So yes, you could tell he's went all in, but the one thing that he wasn't able to change was the goaltending situation. And I think that, yes, he is coaching for his future, but at the same time, he's not going to completely jeopardize the future to go out and get a goalie for a year. Because say he does do that, and then the goalie walks, and then he leaves his team without a goalie in a worse situation, then he's not going to keep his job anyway. So it's very admirable that he's completely going in on one side, but still not, completely clearing the cupboards with trades. He flexed his muscles the other way. Joe Tsai, maybe Uncle Joe opens up the wallet. They're able to get free agency, get some players via free agency rather than trading and selling off assets.
Yeah, and even that John LaFontaine deal early in the offseason, I think it was
huge,
a big
yes,
addition.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll move on to Oshawa here, or formerly Albany, if you're just catching up on the NLL season, missed the whole offseason. But running it back, with the exception of, Volkov went out the door. Right now you don't have John Wagner under a deal, and you do add in Kyle Rubisch and Tiger Clark. Last year, this team started 1-5 and then 2-8 before going 5-3 to finish. But they were so hurt last year. Tchaikovsky missed 2. Volkov missed 7. Watkinson 4. Nishimura 12. Wagner missed the final 15. And then you add in Rubisch, but he also missed 6. So if this defense can stay healthy, are they the team that can make it back to, or make a finals run? Or was it less about injuries last year and more about teams kind of finally figuring out what this team is like? Because the story's been out there for 2 years. They play a different style of lacrosse than the rest of the league. Were they just finally figured out, or was the injuries more to do with it?
Listen, I know at the start of the year there was some chatter about the offense, like, oh, maybe they figured out Simmons or Kurtz. That's not the case at all. Simmons still finished with 95. Kurtz had 88. Walker had a great year with 75. Like, the offense, they figured it out. They found other ways to score. It was the defensive side of the ball that, yes, they played a completely different style. That team started to figure out, okay, instead of funneling guys down low and taking away the top side of the floor, they're funneling guys up, and they want Doug Jamieson to see the shots from that area of the floor. Halfway through the season, they completely switched things up because it did get figured out. They switched offensive and defensive coordinators. Daryl Gibson now coaching the defense, and Clem D'Orazio coaching the offense. Both guys, actually, that's where their expertise are, mind you. So that happens, and the season completely flips on its head. But with that being said, I still think it was the injuries. You talk about all those guys, all the man games lost. Like, this group maybe doesn't have the big sexy defender name that's going to be up for Defensive Player of the Year, but they have 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that are just lunch pail guys, put their hard hat on, and they're going to work for a full 60, grind you down, be a thorn in your side, and they're going to contribute in transition as well. Nick Tchaikovsky, in my personal opinion, is one of the most underrated defenders in the game. The guy made Team Canada, for crying out loud, and no one really talks about this guy at all. So he's an absolute workhorse. If he's healthy and can be back there, you had a veteran stalwart in Kyle Rubisch. And Doug Jamieson, don't want to say it was an off year by any stretch of the imagination, but he had some ebbs in his flows where he didn't really look like himself at all. So I think when you factor all that in together, this is a team that's going to be closer to the team that made it to the final. Are they going to make the final? Are they going to be a top 4 seeded team? I don't know. They have the potential to do it if they stay healthy, because not enough people were talking about the injuries last year to the defense. I don't know why. I was screaming it until I was blue in the face, but everyone would just want to be like, oh, they've figured out Cinderella's slipper fell off her shoe. This thing's done. Is he washed? What's happened to Dougie? I was like, no, that is not the case. They've made the adjustments, and look what they were able to do, going 5-3 down the stretch. Like you mentioned, they were 1 game away from making the playoffs. And as you know, anything can happen in the postseason, especially in round 1. So who knows what we're talking about this group. Instead of being a bounce back, maybe they're coming off a deep run. Who knows? But I just feel like this group with a healthy defense and an offense that's 1 year older. Look out. I think Dyson Williams is going to have an absolute breakout season. He was great last year in his rookie year, but 64 points. I think he'll be the first guy to tell you he expected more out of himself. He looks dynamite in preseason. Like, he is picking corners. He looks faster, bigger, stronger. It could be an absolute problem for NLL defenders going up against Willie this year.
Yeah, I think it was the overtime winner that he had versus Buffalo that something clicked last year, and then he just started pouring it on in the second half. But it makes me feel good that you're pretty good on this team and high on this team, and it was injuries because I just have them in my 4 spot, so I didn't want to look like a complete idiot this early. But
well, I know it's not good. I know it's not good podcasting to agree all the time, but I have them in. I haven't done my official rankings yet, but they will be somewhere in the 4 or 5 spot for me. I just think the offense is too talented, and the defense, when healthy, when athletic, is just so difficult to play against. And again, elite goaltending. Doug Jameson is an elite goalie.
So we'll move on to Ottawa here. Big changes. Dan McRae comes in, taking over head coach and GM. Finally getting a righty to pair with Jeff Teat. They've been calling for a while. That was his number 1 priority, and he finally gets it done. They get a healthy Callum Jones back, who missed half the season last year, and I think there was a big reason why they didn't actually sneak into the playoffs. Mind you, they had the worst offense in the league, but secondary story. But is this... I mean, this franchise still hasn't even made the playoffs yet between New York and now Ottawa. But the Black Bears make the playoffs if this happens. What is that?
They will make the playoffs if they have another 30-plus goal scorer. I think it's easy to point to Rob Hellier as that guy. They finally got, the other player on the right side of the floor to be that dominant ball carrier, and that you just don't have to focus on 51. Here's the thing, though. Teams are still going to have to focus on 51. The offense is still going to go through his stick, but now when it gets swung to the righties, it's either coming back to Teat, and you got to keep your head on a swivel, or there's another guy on the right side that can carry that ball and can make you pay. They've had some great depth pieces in years past, but you just look back last year, Teat scores 56. Your next is Larson Sundown with 24. The year previous to that, you look again, there's no one else is hitting that 30 goal mark. We know there's going to be a lot of goals out of 51 stick, but other guys have to step up and not just be secondary scoring. Every team would love to have Josh and Dane. There's no doubt the recipe's out there. I think to win a championship, you need 2 elite players on both sides of the floor. It just simply has to happen. Look at Rochester, and they're not even a quote unquote elite team. I think they're an elite offense, but look at the floor balance. You need floor balance. And one thing with this team last year, I think they put in a lot of stock with Connor Kiernan as the number 1 righty, which I think he has the capabilities of being a number 1 righty, but he's not a number 1 ball carrying righty. He got put in a lot of awkward spots last year where he looked uncomfortable, carrying the ball up the top, dodging from the sideboards. That's not his game. His game is getting the ball on top of the crease, jamming home a dunk, or, setting a hard seal, rolling to the middle, getting a pass from Teat off a back cut, putting it in the back of the net. He makes all his hay in the middle of the floor on top of the crease, not carrying that ball. So now Hellier is going to be able to carry the ball. I think obviously Jeff Teat is the number 1 beneficiary of Hellier coming in. Number 2, and not very close behind, is Kiernan. I think Kiernan's going to have a massive, massive year because he's going to have another running mate on that right-hand side. So if they're going to make the playoffs, we know Higgins. We know what he's going to be able to do. I thought the defense was outstanding last year. Even you look at all the coaching changes. Dan McRae comes in. Brian Beasel's the only guy on that staff that returns on the bench because the defense wasn't the issue last year. It was the offense. 56 goals. I've said this on a couple of programs now, but I will say it until the season starts because it is purely criminal. Jeff Teat finishes with 56 goals last year. Only 5 of them are on the power play. How is that possible? Like, Dan McRae, number one job coming into this season is figuring out his offensive coordinator, Dylan Evans. How do we get the ball in 51 stick more to score on the power play? If we're getting that, if he's getting 56 and only 5 of them on the power play, what happens if some of those start sinking on the man advantage? Are we talking about a 60, 65 goal scoring season? Is Dane Smith's goal scoring record now in trouble?
Over his shoulder.
Like, it's pretty crazy. So, 51, again, he drives the bus. He is the franchise. He's arguably the face of lacrosse right now, but it can't just be him. Lacrosse is a team game. You need another running mate. I think Rob Hellyer is going to be that guy.
So we'll move on to Philly here, and I probably made a lot of enemies with Philly this episode that came out on Wednesday here. But this team is, has everyone has this team pegged finishing towards the bottom. We mentioned it off the top, them and Calgary. Now, they were able to convince Joey Rez to come back, and they got Brendan O'Neill on the other side of the ball. Is this a team that everyone might be looking past, or, I mean, can they make some noise if everybody is looking past them, or are they truly in this type of reshape the franchise type of thing? Because I heard Paul Days on with Last Class, he mentioned like the last 2 off seasons they added a bunch of free agency, didn't work, and now they're trying it this way. So is this a team that can actually make noise and maybe play spoiler, or are they on deck for kind of a struggle this season?
Listen, if you listen to that interview, that sounds like a guy, and maybe it's a little bit of head games, but that sounds like a guy that knows this is a rebuilding season. And he was excited about certain guys coming in, super impressed with the way that Joe Rez came in a lot of great shape. Eric Fennell looks like he's healthy, and it looks like he's going to really, really thrive, freeing up space for Brendan O'Neill. Like, they have pieces here and there. I listened to your pod today, and you saying that the goal scoring could be an issue absolutely scares me, because I think it's going to be the defense that's going to be an issue, and that's not a knock against their goalies. I think Damoud is a legitimate number one, and I think Deacon Knock is a legitimate number one in the making. I just look at that defensive depth chart, and I think there's going to be a ton of growing pains. There was growing pains last year with this group, and you lose Mitch Desnew. Chris Corbeil is a year older. Like, I just don't see how this defensive group got better. In fact, it got worse. They get a healthy Mitch Armstrong back, who's great. He's a young kid, but he's not going to be a game changer by any stretch of the imagination. So for me, it's like the defense is a problem. And I think there's going to be some nights where the offense is going to be a problem. That's a problem this year, but you've got a lot of young pieces up front with that group that you can grow. You still have Joe Reziteritz. He can be the elder statesman. He can teach these guys. But if you can get another season of Michael Sowers inside the box, you give a little more opportunity to Sam LeClaire to be an everyday contributor. I'm a huge fan of Landon Sinfield. I was blown away with what he was able to do at the President's Cup. I think he's a great player. Obviously, we know what Brendan O'Neill has the capabilities to do just with his pure athleticism, his size, and his skill. And Brian Cameron, I think, was a sneaky addition as well. I liked what we saw out of him in Toronto until he got hurt. So there is potential. Blaze Reardon, he starts the year on the IR or the PUP. I don't know how long he's going to be out for. So the pieces are there. It's just, you can't look past anyone. To get back to your ultimate question, you can't look past anyone. I said it off the top, parity. If you take a night off against Philly, they're going to make you sting. But I just think that the skill gap, especially on the defensive side, is just going to be too big when you look at how much better a lot of these teams in the league got.
So we'll move on to Rochester here. I think this team is pretty much bringing everybody back, and then they added Zed Williams to replace Curtis Knight. That's just not fair to an already dangerous offense. But many eyes are on the back end, and if Hartley plays 18 regular season games, is this the team that can finally knock the door down, or are there still more issues on the back end coming out the back door that might still be lingering?
Well, I think elite goaltending can mask a lot of things defensively, and certainly I believe that when Hartley's healthy, he's a game changer. He's an absolute electrofactory, definitely a unorthodox style. Sometimes makes the saves that he can't make, and then sometimes allows the goal that he probably should have, but he's going to battle back, and he is as intense as a competitor as you will ever see. So I think if he's healthy, if he's ready to go, he might be able to hide some of the defensive warts that this group has. I think when it comes to transition, I think they're one of the best transition teams in the league. Jake Pacino, I think, is going to have a breakout season this year, a full year with him. Rylan Rees, for whatever reason, no one wants to talk about this guy. Just looking at their depth chart here, Brad Gillies, obviously elder statesman, a guy that, can build around. Chad Tutton, again, another great player. Adam Thistlethwaite, a lot of people are super high on him. Excited to see what he can do. Taylor Jensen, I think, again, a guy that's going to grow and grow with this group. And I just, for me, when you look at the defense on paper, they should. Oh, Matt Gilroy. How could I have forgot about Matt Gilroy? One of the best transition players in the league. So, just looking at their depth chart here on paper, it should be better. Maybe it's a little bit too much of the same. And that's what the issue is, because I do find when push comes to shove in some of those big games, the defense kind of underperforms. But like I said, if you have Hartley, maybe you can kind of control those. Maybe during the, around the trade deadline, you're able to bring in a couple of different pieces, more of those stay-at-home guys. I think this group, though, if they can figure it out defensively a little more, and if Hartley can stay healthy, we know what their offense can do. This is a scary, scary, scary lacrosse club.
I was just thinking off the top of my head, imagine if Georgia does struggle, Rochester's looking to add a piece. I would call for Mike Manley to maybe come to Buffalo. Maybe I was just a little too far west. Maybe he goes to Rochester. If that seems like it could be a fit. But San Diego, sweeping changes on the left-hand side, and I'll give you full flowers there. You called it from the get-go last offseason that you thought the left side of San Diego was a bit too weak, and that was hammered home last year. But they addressed it. They bring in Connor Robinson in a trade, and they sign Corey Small in free agency. They also added Dylan Watson last year from Las Vegas as well, and he came on, and I thought he played very well in that system as well. This allows DeChico and Courier to play their more natural transition role, and I think that changes the whole dynamic of the entire team. But did they do enough to balance out the offense, especially now that Rob Hellier is shipped to Ottawa?
I want to say no, but what this group has done over the last couple of years is kind of play more of a steady, sound defensive game with a lot of athletes on the back end that get up in hands and really cause a lot of chaos in the defensive end, push the ball up. And really, it's like, let's hang around in this game. And then the fourth quarter comes on and Westberg's just going to take over the game. And I don't know if that's a great recipe for long sustainability, but it did work at stretches of times last year. And thank you for those flowers, because I could not believe that they went into that offseason. I'm glad they've addressed them. I think Corey Small's a great ad. He's getting a little long in the tooth, but I mean, the guy can score big goals in big moments. It looks, watching that game in Vancouver, it looks like he's in great shape. I really thought Jake Govett really, really came on last year as a guy that can set hard picks, free up space, but when the ball's in his stick, he can make you pay as well. So I think they're just, for me right now, I think they're at that 9-9 mark somewhere. Maybe make the playoffs depending on what happens elsewhere, or finish in that 8 hole. To me, it's just, outside of Berg and LeClaire on that right side, Ben McIntosh, we know what he's done in previous years. His numbers have to come up. I think last year I was harping on the left side. Now this year it's like, I would have liked them to see them maybe fill in the hole that Hellier leaves, and maybe they address it at some point of the year. So now I'm like, okay, you kind of fix the left side, which, it's fine, but I would have really liked to see them fill that void for Hellier, because everyone talked about Berg, and for great reason. 50-plus goal season, like so many game-winning goals. Hellier led this team in points last year.
Not MVP,
he
though.
was.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Not him.
I thought you were talking about Courier again. I was ready to
Courier.
hammer home that one.
That's another That's another topic because I had a vote burning in my pocket to vote for him as MVP, and I wasn't even able to. So yeah. I think this group is gonna. I mean, not to get off on a tangent here, but like Chris Origlieri, do we know? Like, yeah. It sounds like he's going to be in camp this upcoming weekend, which is great. But if he gets a job and has to go away and get into, his job with firefighting and he goes away there, it's like Cam Dunkerley's a great goalie, but I don't know if he's carrying this group like Origlieri did last year and the year before that. And I think a lot of people even thought Origlieri was so last year for the entire season. But I don't know. This team held Buffalo to 5 goals in a playoff game. Like, I think the defense is so good and not enough people talk about how good they really are.
Yeah, they're going to have to win a lot of lower scoring games, in my opinion. And I got them in the 9th spot.
Agreed.
For a reason for that. But we'll talk about a team that nobody really is talking about, and that's Saskatchewan. And they were 1 win away from winning the titles themselves. And I still think they're going to go in hosting a playoff game, possibly even advancing into another finals. But again, no one's really talking about this team. Is that a good thing for this type of team that likes those bulletin board materials that can now fly under the radar again? They're not the one that made the noise, but they really didn't have to do much when their biggest addition this offseason was a draft pick in Birch.
It's the best thing for this group, to be quite honest, because I felt like going into game 3, maybe they got a little bit too cocky at points. A couple of really, really cold takes in the media ended up getting exposed in game 3. And this is a group that really never read the press clippings, didn't care about what was said. And even if those press clippings made it inside that locker room, well, Jimmy Quinlan was shutting it down and saying, no one believes in you. And I think now that they can say, like, look, you guys made it to the finals. You guys lost 1 game away from preventing Buffalo from making history, and nobody's talking about you. And that's the perfect way to motivate a group that, again, maybe might feel like, because there's a lot of young guys in that locker room made their first playoff push that might think, okay, this is just going to happen again. He's going to use that as motivation for his group to say, no one believes you. You guys need to prove it. I am so high on this team. I think they 100% should be in the conversation to go back to the finals this year. They didn't make any moves because they didn't need to. They didn't need to add anything. They didn't want to rock the boat. Last year, they didn't have a single player over 80 points. Well, that's fine because they had 4 guys with 70 plus. Like, this offense was everybody eats. And some nights it was Zach Mans who maybe he ate a little more and he had a little more on his plate. Maybe Robert Church was the guy that got the ball a little more. And in the playoffs, we saw Austin Shanks was a guy that was feeding and feasting. No doubt about that. So this group is going to be fine, and they are 1,000% going to use this as motivation.
Yeah, Bills fans, that's what it actually means when everybody eats.
Yeah. Oh, God, don't get me started.
Oh, I know. It's been a rough season. But Toronto, I expected the Rock to kind of take a step back last year, but I don't think myself or anybody expected them to go 6-12. But they reloaded quick. I mean, Jamie Dawick worked magic and got the first 3 picks in this draft. But are they right back into the playoffs, or is this team just a bit too young on the left side and a bit too shallow on the right-hand side?
I don't think so. I think this group is right back where they were, and maybe they're not a perennial number 1 or number 2 seed, but I think they're a team that we could probably see a home game played in round number 1 in Hamilton. I really, really do. I think you talk about the youth on that left side. Well, I mean, Owen Hiltz has looked phenomenal in preseason. I know, yes, it is preseason, but he's shooting the lights out. He fits perfectly in there. He looks like he was built in a Peterborough lab. Like, this guy is he finds the soft areas of the floor. He's got a quick release. He can score from the outside. CJ Kirst, again, freak of nature, so skilled, works so hard, does a lot of the little things. Watching his last 2 games, like, I am so sure this guy is going to be great, and he's not going to. Maybe some people are like, well, if he doesn't have the ball in his stick all the time, I don't know how it's there's too many touches for Matthews. No, this guy's going to figure it out as a secondary scoring piece, and that's only going to make him that much better of a player. Healthy Mark Matthews comes back. Having those two young guys to learn by him, I think can't be overstated enough. Like, he's going to take a lot of heat off them. He's going to, teach them about the ebbs and flows of the NLL. He looks healthy. He looks great. The right side, I will say this. I think Challen Rogers, if I'm going to be hard on San Diego and say, why do you have Courier out the back, playing out the front door? He's better out the back. You're taking away a unicorn of the game. I have to be just as hard on Toronto. But with that being said, when Tom Schreiber goes out and gets double knee surgery and you can't really address it in the offseason, you don't really have much of a choice. Do I think, though, that they're going to probably address it at some point during the year? Absolutely, I think so. 100%. I do think if Schreiber does not come back at some point, there's going to be another righty there. But if one of those guys go down, it could be absolute panic zone. And the other thing, too, is like you're putting a lot of eggs in the basket that Bushi and Dowick don't regress at all. But from watching them in preseason, watching what some of the guys did over the summer, I think they have a great year. And maybe they don't score as many goals because you've got those great lefties on the other side. And I think Challen Rogers, a full season as a forward, he's going to do some special things as well. I think their point totals actually might go up. Maybe the goals drop, but their assist totals are going to go up. Toronto's back, man. Revenge tour in Hamilton. But let's be honest. Like, as good as they are in the regular season, the question has always been, what do you do in the playoffs? So that is where I'm looking at this group to say, yeah, they're going to be back. They're going to be a top seeded team. But what can they do in the playoffs? Can this group get over the hump? Maybe the injection of youth is what they were looking for, especially on that left side, because that left side in some of those games against Buffalo, you saw firsthand, kind of underperformed.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering how long it takes them to push Sam English up on the right-hand side as well, because on that depth chart, they had him playing defense. I think if he's able to take that step and allow Rodgers to push back on defense, that just opens up so many more possibilities for that team.
Yeah, it really does. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some games where Challen, starts out the O-door, English is out the back door, and then they switch at some point. Or, you even have both guys going out the back door and they run three lefties every single shift. And maybe some shifts it's Dowick's out there and Bushi's out there. And then the next shift, it's going to be, okay, Challen's pushing the ball and staying and playing. Like, I think they're going to get a little bit creative. And the one thing as well, and this is no knock against Rusty Kruger, but now on the bench, you have Dan Dawson, one of the brightest minds. Him to work with all this talent, I think we're going to see a lot of a different offense, because in years past, this team lived and died by the outside shot. It looked great in the regular season. Come playoff time, I look at some of those games against the Bandits, couldn't even get shots on net. So for me, I think Dawson's going to be a huge story, which I don't think enough people are talking about, adding that brain onto that bench.
So we got two teams left, and they're possibly the two ones that most people are predicting to make the finals. And we'll start with Vancouver here. I mean, if you don't have them as a 1 or 2 seed, you're just straight hating on what they did this offseason, because it's very simple. My question is, if they do not make the finals, is this season considered a failure? Not even win the whole championship, just make the finals. Is this considered a failure for this team?
Well, they went to the semis last year, and look at how much better on paper this group is. Absolutely, it is 100%. This team has, and I think if you ask the guys in the locker room, and heck, I know if you ask Coach Miloski, he's going to tell you, yes, that is their goal. This is a championship caliber team. When you have the pressure, and now they are using the advantage of being a local team, bringing local guys back. And the Miloski effect, the mouse effect, is in full effect. Guys want to go back home and play for this guy. But now the pressure's on. Now you bring back a Curtis Dixon, future Hall of Famer. You bring in one of the smartest players in the planet, in Jesse King. great pick, by the way, for a sleeper for MVP. I don't think that is that hot of a take. I think it's a great take because he is supremely underrated. He could have a boatload of assists. Maybe not a Dane Smith assist season, but somewhere close to that. I think he's going to be feeding all day long. Yes, and this is just the offense that they improved. The defense was one of the best defenses I've seen assembled in a very, very long time. I think we're talking
to it.
Yeah. Then they get better in transition and they get a full season of Christian Del Bianco. This team, it's championship or bust. If they were to lose to the Bandits or were to lose to, let's say, Toronto in the final, or, then, in the final, maybe. I think there's still a part of it. Whereas if you don't win, it's man, really thought this was the year, but oh, well, this group can stay together next year. If they don't make the playoff or make the final, it is a failure. It's not a disaster. It's not, okay, what do we need to change? But man, how did this team not make the finals?
So last team here, and I saved it for last because Buffalo Sports Collective. We'll start with Buffalo. Kluch, Frazier, both gone. Sounds like Martin's gone as well. It's the first offseason that we've been covering this team that we've actually had conversations of what this team actually looks like, because it's different players in different positions. Is there a player on this team beyond the top names that you believe needs to step up into a bigger role to replace those three major losses they had this offseason?
Does Ian McKay count as a major name? Because I think
after
he's
the
probably
playoffs, yes.
I think he's the most important piece when you look at it. But again, yes, he is supremely important. The next one, though, I think it's Dogan Anacoke. I think that, he doesn't have to automatically become a 70-point scorer, but I think we need to see more offensively out of him. And the reason why we haven't seen it in the past is, yes, there's a lot of other mouths to feed, but he plays so well without the ball. I don't think a lot of people realize how important he is in the pick game. So, yes, we always see Dane and Kyle Buchanan in the pick and roll game. I think we see a little more of Dahoka in the fold. I think we see Dahoka maybe on the power play this year. I mean, this is a guy that basically virtually had no power play time last year or the last couple of years, maybe when the second unit rolled out or there was an injury. So I think he's going to play a massive role offensively. He has to. He's going to have to fill a little bit of that void and be more than just a solid secondary scoring piece. On the defensive side, I don't think one guy really can replace what Justin Martin does. He is the human eraser. Every single night, Steve Dietrich says, okay, go out, you cover the best player. And, 8 times out of 10, you're looking at the other team and you're like, wow, how did that happen? Well, it's because Justin Martin. You look at Martin's stats, 0, 0, 0, couple caused turnovers, no loose ball. What? If you watch him, I had so many times when I watch Bandits games, I just locked my eyes on him. So sorry, Bandits fan, not one player is going to be able to fill that void, but I think one player that needs to maybe take a step and become more of a important role or a important piece of this defense is Dylan Robinson. I coach Dylan Robinson, so this might be a little bit of a biased take. He is a freak athlete, supreme hockey player. I don't think people really realize how little of lacrosse that he's actually played over the last, 6-7 years. He literally quit so he could focus on lacrosse. His second last year, junior, was like, you know what? I'm going to play again. Then he gets drafted, plays another year, junior. He basically was thrown right into the fire right away. He had one full junior A season before he played a season in the NLL. And you're seeing that progression continue to get better and better and better. And I think he takes that step even more. 11 points last year. I think we could see Dylan Robinson scoring 20 points this year. And he is such a fiery competitor. I'd like to see him dial that back a little bit with, being a little more disciplined. But being a guy that gets under other teams' skin, that's what you need. That's Bandits lacrosse. And I think if he adds a little more of that edge to his game while becoming a little more of a transitional piece, I think we're talking about a Dylan Robinson who has effects all over the floor. Maybe he's not Ian McKay 2.0, but he's a guy that's an absolute game wrecker.
Yeah, I love that pick because we've been calling for it for a couple of years now, and especially with Ian McKay playing full-time forward, you needed that next Ian McKay in the wings. I was hoping it was going to be Dylan Robinson, so you reinforcing that that's still a possibility. I love that pick.
Yeah, I think he dealt with some injuries last year as well, and that entire family, just for whatever reason, were made of glass. I'm hoping he can stay healthy because I think a full 20 games out of Dylan Robinson, you're looking. I mean, he had a point per game, so just not a big math guy. Everyone knows this, but he was on pace to be a point per game. Maybe I'm setting the bar too low. Maybe we should be talking about 25, 26 points, but I think he's poised for a breakout season in many facets of the game.
So we blitzed through the entire league. Pat, thanks again for joining us on the Buffalo Sports Collective. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you if for some reason they're not following you, the podcast, and pretty much anything else you want to plug while you're here?
Yeah, sure. Just you can give me a follow on X at P Greggy. If you want to give me a follow on Instagram as well at P Greggy 22. The podcast, myself, Teddy Jenner. We've started our season previews already. We'll have Mitch Belisle on this week to kind of phase off all the last teams that we haven't covered yet, and great timing because Buffalo Bandits are going to be one of those. So it's the Off the Crossbar podcast, OTCB Podcast. You can find that on all socials, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to all your favorite podcasts. And if you're looking for some draft coverage as well. Appreciate you guys for giving us a shout out. I am also a part of the On the Clock lacrosse crew. We did a lot of coverage leading up to the draft this past year. We've already put out our way too early 26 prospects for the 26 draft. We're going to be pumping out some content all year long as well. So keep an eye on that. Give us a follow there just because there's not enough talk when it comes to these prospects.
Yeah, 100%. I love that source. It's invaluable. There's not enough out there. But thanks again for joining us on the BSC. Hope to talk to you down the road and continued success with the OTCB podcast and broadcasting.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. Keep on doing what you're doing. We need more lacrosse content. We need more team-specific content. And I've got you guys subscribed. It is a part of my weekly process. Helps a lot with my prep, too. So I really appreciate it.
Well, stay tuned. We got a lot of interviews coming up, especially leading up to the game one. But we'll be back Friday to talk. I'm sorry. We'll be back Monday to talk about Buffalo versus Georgia. We'll talk to you all then.